2,000 feet down in the Atlantic, a robot found a name: Pan American. The winged globe, still readable on a fuselage that has been lying in the dark, broken in two, since before most of us were born. The aircraft is called the Clipper Endeavour. It went into the sea on Good Friday, 1952, 9 minutes into a flight that was taking 69 people home for Easter. 52 of them died, 17 survived. 2 of those survivors are alive right now. One of them is 102 years old, and on that afternoon she helped force open the door that saved the people who lived. And here is the part that should stay with you. The reason this aircraft fell out of the sky would fit in a teaspoon. The reason so many people died inside it is something you have heard at the start of every flight you have ever taken. Because after this story, the world was never allowed to forget it again. April 11th, 1952, Isla Grande Airport, San Juan, Puerto Rico. A Douglas DC-4 is boarding for New York. 64 passengers, 5 crew. It is Good Friday, and this flight has a nickname: the Easter Special. Families, children, people flying north to spend the holiday with relatives in the city. The aircraft is 7 years old, a workhorse built in the last months of the war. Registration N88899. Pan American calls her the Clipper Endeavour. In her number 3 engine, there is a problem. It was found before the flight. During maintenance, mechanics drained the oil and found metal flakes on the screen, on the sump plug, and in the oil hopper, about a teaspoonful of them. Metal in the oil means an engine is grinding itself apart from the inside. Company procedure said an engine in that condition gets changed. The assistant chief mechanic looked at the flakes and decided it wasn't necessary. The office that could have overruled him, the report says it plainly, should have ordered the engine changed. Nobody did. And 69 people boarded behind it. 12:11 in the afternoon. The Clipper Endeavour lifts off and turns for New York. At 350 feet, engine number 3 fails. The crew feathers the propeller, turns the blades edge on to the wind, and elects to come back to San Juan. This is what they train for. A DC-4 can fly on 3 engines. Then, at 550 feet, on the turn back, number 4 starts running rough. Both failing engines are on the same wing, and now the aircraft cannot hold its altitude. Captain John Byrne has minutes of sky left and a decision to make. Beneath the aircraft is the city, a reef, and the open Atlantic. He chooses the water, 11 miles northwest of the airport, 4.5 miles offshore, away from the congested streets and the coral. At 12:20, 9 minutes after takeoff, he puts the airliner down onto a rough sea. The ditching itself is close to textbook. The airframe survives it. Almost everyone inside survives it. What happens in the next 3 minutes is the reason this story changed aviation. The tail has broken off behind the cabin. Water is coming in. The Clipper Endeavour will float for less than 3 minutes. And inside the cabin, almost nobody moves. There had been no safety briefing. In 1952, nothing required one. Many passengers had never flown before. Some did not share a language with the crew. They did not know where the life vests were, or that there were rafts, or what a ditching even was. The report and the foundation that found the wreck both say it. No briefing, a language barrier, no evacuation procedure. The passengers were not prepared, because nobody had prepared them. Survivors said people stayed in their seats, with their belts fastened as the water rose. Others refused to go through the door. The sea was rough, and there were sharks in these waters, and the cabin felt safer than the ocean. It wasn't. The crew knew what the passengers didn't. Captain Byrne came out of the cockpit into the cabin and ordered everyone out. The report says the response was very little. so he helped force the main cabin door open and began physically pulling people out of their seats and pushing them through it. A young nurse in her 20s was beside him at that door, helping to hold it open, helping people through. She is one of the 2 survivors still alive today. While Byrne was gripping the door handle, a wave caught the door and hurled him into the sea. The heavy swells would not let him back. The last thing the captain of the Clipper Endeavour did aboard his aircraft was throw other people off of it. 3 minutes after she touched the water, the Clipper Endeavour went under. Every member of the crew survived. 52 of the 64 passengers did not. That is the arithmetic of knowing what to do, and the price of never being told. Overhead, Air Force pilots who had watched the ditching were circling, marking the position. Their map is going to matter again, 74 years from now. Remember it. The Coast Guard put 2 Catalina flying boats into the air. One of them, with a co-pilot named Jack Natwig, landed in seas that flying boats are not supposed to land in. 13 people were in a raft. 2 more were alone in the open water, and a boy was drifting away from all of them. Natwig opened the overhead hatch of his aircraft, dove into the sea, swam to the boy, and inflated his own life vest to keep them both afloat until an Air Force amphibian picked them up, along with Captain Byrne. A Coast Guard cutter took the raft survivors aboard, and when the Catalina taxied into San Juan harbor, with the people it had pulled from the sea, crowds lined the shore and cheered. A local trio recorded a ballad about the crash. In Puerto Rico, this story has a name: La Tragedia del Viernes Santo. The Good Friday Tragedy. The Civil Aeronautics Board took 5 months. Their file is number 1-0026, and their verdict has 2 parts. And it does not spare anyone. Part A, the company's inadequate maintenance. The engine that was never changed, with a teaspoon of its own metal already sitting in the oil. That is where the 9 minutes began. Part B is harder to hear. The board also found that the captain, trying to coax a climb out of the aircraft, did not use all the power he had. The nose came up, the airspeed bled away, and the sea arrived too early to recover. The same man who threw his passengers to safety through a broken door is, in the file, part of the cause. Both of those sentences are true. The record holds them together, and so should we. But the board did not stop at blame. In the wake of the accident, it moved to amend the Civil Air Regulations, Parts 40, 41, 42, and 61. Life rafts and the vests approved, equipped, and reachable. And before any flight over open water, a briefing, spoken to every passenger, where the vests are, how they work, where the exits are, including, the rule says it explicitly, a demonstration of how to put a life jacket on. Read that again. The safety demonstration, the one you have watched a flight attendant perform 100 times, the one you talk through, the one you sleep through, is not a formality. It is a memorial. It exists because 52 people sat in a floating aircraft with the water rising, and nobody had ever told them what to do. The sea kept the rest. 39 of the 52 were never recovered. For 74 years, the Clipper Endeavour was a position estimate in an old file and a stack of testimony in an archive in San Juan. Then, in 2019, the president of a small maritime heritage foundation, Russ Matthews, started pulling that file apart. With the team from Expedition Unknown, his search led to the General Archive of Puerto Rico, hearing records, survivor testimony, radio transcripts. And one more thing. The chart drawn by the Air Force pilots who circled overhead that afternoon. The witnesses' map, the one from minute 8 of this story. This spring, a survey ship carrying deep-water drones, the same company, as it happens, that produced the sonar images in the hunt for Amelia Earhart's Electra, ran that 74-year-old map against the seafloor north of Puerto Rico. On June 2, 2026, at 14 minutes past 7 in the evening, the sonar returned a shape 2,000 feet down, an aircraft broken in two. The paint has held on for 3/4 of a century. The winged globe, the name, Clipper Endeavour. The two living survivors were told before the world was. The foundation that found her is working with Puerto Rico to protect the site permanently, because this is not wreckage. It is a resting place. 39 people are still aboard, 74 Easters later. There is talk of a memorial on the island now, but the truest one was built in 1952, out of regulations. And it is performed by a crew member standing in an aisle thousands of times a day on every airline on Earth. The next time you fly and someone stands up to show you how a life jacket works, that is the Clipper Endeavour talking. Give her 30 seconds. A plane can be lost for 74 years and still be found. There is another aircraft this channel has followed. 239 people, 11 years, an ocean far emptier than this one. And the search for it is on right now. That story is on your screen. And if you want these investigations every week, from the record, with the receipts on screen, the file for the next one is already open.